honest, when it's not sunny, seaside can be pretty miserable. So we're going to go off, we're going to do something. We're not going to sit around the house. We're going to venture out, drive along the coast to, if it's open, a new charity shop that I heard about yesterday. So I thought, well, we'll go and have a look. You never know, there may be something worthwhile getting. But, gets us out of the house, if nothing else. And in the words of the great Kermit, we may get a coffee, although they are not a sponsor. Stuck behind a dust cart already. Oh, no. Yeah. 2 days ago, it was up in the mid to high 20s, humid, dry, and now we're in this. Always love this section of road. You've got 2 lanes go down into one. You're never quite sure if anyone's going to give way or if they're not going to give way. Luckily, being in a biggish car, you tend to get out of the way. I must admit, I do like my car because you sit up quite high, therefore you can see a lot further, and also it's a bit imposing on people, so they kind of think twice before doing something stupid. Alright, I can see a circus tent. The circus is in town. I don't know about you, but I never liked clowns. Clowns were something, as a kid, didn't scare me, but I just couldn't see the point of clowns. You know, and to this day, I can't, you know, I think I'd rather be a road sweeper than be a clown, you know. It just seemed to be a pointless form of entertainment. Got the circus in town. When I was a kid, back in the early 60s, 65, 66, Homefield Park, which is one of the big parks in Worthing, the circus used to come to town, and that was back in the days when they had elephants, giraffes, tigers, you name it, they had it. You know, live animal entertainment was not frowned on in those days. And I remember as kids, they had this really sad lion in a cage on the back of a trailer, I would imagine, and no health and safety. You could literally walk up to this cage on this truck, on this trailer, and you could literally put your hand between the bars, and as kids we used to dare each other to do it. Fortunately, the lion was so old and so disinterested, he never ever once went for it. But as I say, you couldn't imagine, you wouldn't be allowed nowadays within, I don't know, 100 feet of a lion. You'd be behind, you know, double security mesh fencing, but you could literally walk up to the cage and put your hand between the bars, as we used to do, which is probably a good reason not to have it now, because we know a young James who probably would stick his arm through the bars, you know, end up getting his hand chewed off. But yeah, different times, absolutely different times, the things that were permitted and allowed. Around a similar time, mid-60s, Steen Gardens, which featured in one of the other videos, on the seafront at Worthing, they had an exhibition which I went to and saw with my mum and dad as a kid. I wouldn't have been more than about 6 or 7 years old. And this exhibition consisted of a big semi-trailer which was all enclosed, and you paid to go into these, up some steps and behind a curtain to view what was in the semi-trailer. And what they actually had in this trailer in the middle of the park, and people were paying, I don't know, 20p or whatever it was in those days to go and view it, is they had a dead sperm whale, and it was in a tank of like formaldehyde or something to preserve it, but literally they had this, not sure if it was an adult one or if it was a junior, you know, adolescent, but they were touring around the country with a sperm whale in a giant tank of formaldehyde, and you could pay to go behind the curtain and look at this sperm whale. And to this day I don't think I've ever seen anything so sad. It was a magnificent creature, passed away, and then was being towed around the country on a trailer to all these little towns and such like, and exhibited. I suppose in those days when you only had like 2 TV channels and there really wasn't any nature programs on TV other than Johnny Morris and Bristol Zoo, you wouldn't have got the chance to see a whale, you know. But it was a very sad sight. And I remember about, I don't know, a year, 2 years later, watching on TV Gregory Peck in black and white, Moby Dick, with the hunting of the whale. And I always remember rooting for the whale to win, because it really did show the cruelty and the stupidity of whaling. But yeah, great film, Moby Dick, Gregory Peck, black and white. The black and white version with Gregory Peck is probably the best. Patrick Stewart from Star Trek, some point in the 80s, 90s, he did a remake, which once again wasn't too bad. You know, it wasn't a bad version, but nowhere near as good as the Gregory Peck version. But yeah, get the chance to watch that. Yeah, Moby Dick, absolute classic film. But, we're just coming to the roundabout at Shoreham. If you go off to the left, that leads through into Shoreham Airport. But on a day like this, where the clouds are overcast and it's raining, there won't be a lot of activity. But on a nice sunny day in the week, we go and have a look at that. Mostly light aircrafts, helicopters, and you get the odd executive jet that flies in and goes off. They used to do flights from there to the Channel Islands and to Paris, but it was never a commercial success. There was never enough demand, to be honest. But yeah, you could get on a plane there, fly to Paris, or you could fly over to Jersey or Guernsey. Went to Jersey and Guernsey as a kid, really loved it, would like to go back one day. Be a good place. Mrs H would enjoy it, but can't really trust the boys to look after the dogs. Probably come back and find the dogs haven't been walked or haven't been fed for about a week, so we'll have to wait a bit for that one. But yeah, Jersey, absolutely great. Guernsey's fantastic. If you go to Alderney or Sark, that's like going back to the Middle Ages, you know. Can't remember which one it is, Alderney or Sark, but one of them has no vehicles on it. I think the only vehicle they allow is a tractor. The farmers are allowed to use tractors. Otherwise, it's all foot traffic or horse-drawn, which in this day and age is quite antiquated, to be honest, because they're relatively small islands, so you can walk around them, but you know, you wonder how they manage to do a lot of the things we do on a daily basis. So we're coming into Shoreham town centre, just crossing over the Ada River. On the left is some very modern flat developments. We're going to turn, what way are we going to turn? We're going to turn right at the roundabout. Go along the seafront in Shoreham, which seems to be the congested part. Police car ahead. Not sure where he's off to. Shoreham used to have a police station. Like a lot of the smaller towns now don't have police stations. Shoreham used to have a police station, Lancing did. Worthing, because it's got like 100,000 people, has got the main police station and the custody centre. This is like Worthing, not Worthing, Shoreham High Street. My grandfather was born in Shoreham High Street. On the right hand side up here, it's a pub now, and it's got like a pirate figure above the entrance. You'll see it possibly on the right hand side. Well, that used to be a barber shop back at 1900s, and my grandfather was born there, and his father was the barber. And yeah, this, we're just going past the old Shoreham Town Hall, which was closed years ago. But yeah, the barber shop. His father was the barber, as I say, and he had the contract to shave all of the heads of the people in the poorhouse. Now the poorhouse is north of Shoreham and is now Southlands Hospital, but it used to be the poorhouse, whereas if you couldn't pay your debts, you went in there before benefits. And he had the contract, I can't remember, it was something stupid, you know, 2 shillings or something, to go there once a month and shave everyone's head so they didn't get lice. It was a big problem. Grandfather, I think I mentioned it in the graveyard video. Grandfather was one of 3 boys. His 2 brothers, neither of them lived to be beyond 9 or 10 years of age. You know, they died of influenza, flu, common cold, I can't remember which it was. But yeah, he had 2 brothers, and both were dead by 10 years of age. Yeah, infant mortality was a major issue in those days. On the right, you can see yet more modern buildings. This until quite recently, until about 10 years ago, all the right-hand side was warehouse buildings for the port. But as the port has declined, the warehouse is closed, and the land has been redeveloped into these multi-storey blocks of very expensive flats, which now overlook the river and the harbour itself. Mackie D's coming up, Mackie D's drive-through. Mackie D's, Halfords. Not sure, do I need anything in Halfords? Don't think so. B&Q. You can see some of the warehouses that remain on the right-hand side, but they are gradually being reduced. Ahead you can see another big tower block with the cranes, which is another site. It used to be on the right hand side just here, a massive scrapyard, and you used to drive past and the pile of scrap would be about 10 times higher than the wall, and amazing place. I used to take scrap there from the town hall and sell it to Lidl's. I think more or less every town's got a Lidl's now, haven't they? You know. Yeah, this big modern building, this used to be warehousing. But none of these flats go for less than, I don't know, 250,000. And if you've got one of the larger luxury flats, they will go for anything up to, you know, $500,000. Winding our way through the seafront part of Shoreham, On the right you might glimpse in a minute the lighthouse and also the lifeboat station. Yeah, you've got lifeboat station on the right, quite modern looking building, and then ahead you should have the lighthouse which was designed to obviously guide people in through the entrance to the harbour. Now on that part of the harbour there are still quite a lot of warehouses. And ahead you'll see the modern power station, which replaced the old-fashioned power station, which was almost an exact miniature of Battersea power station. It looked like it, the way it was constructed, everything. You could have literally picked it up and moved it to Battersea, but that was coal-fired, and obviously they've now moved over to, I think it's gas-fired or timber-fired. Certainly doesn't use coal. Winding our way to where this charity shop is meant to be. Not much further, a couple hundred yards, I've seen to recall. It's a bit of a weird location for a charity shop because I think it used to be a pub, you know. But, so I'm not sure exactly what the parking's going to be like. This is the main coast road, which you can go all the way to Eastbourne and Hastings via Brighton. Yeah, Guildcare charity shop up here on the left coming up. So we found it. You just gotta find somewhere to park. Well, it's open. Let's have a look. Is there somewhere I can park illegally? Let's have a look. Fox Road. A great one for parking illegally. Car coming out. Problem with a lot of these charity shops when they're not located in the town centre is there's nowhere to park. So, well, they got parking at the rear. They may have parking at the rear, right? What's this here? Customer and staff parking. Oh, that's not too bad then. We'll have a go here then. Right, we've arrived. I'll have to have a check to see if they're happy with people filming inside or not. Okay, see you in a while. Yeah, you might find in Glasgow or in London, but I know that the council, for instance, used to have a policy of putting all their worst tenants in this kind of area, put them all together and they can all suffer each other's antisocial behaviour. But yeah, charity shop literally has only been open a week and some scumbag has broken into it and stolen. What could he steal out of a charity shop, eh? I don't know. State of the nation. Right, this is the coast road. You can see in the background the masts of some of the sailing boats sitting in the harbour. I had a quick look, but I couldn't see any freighters or anything in port today. Didn't seem to be anything of particular interest. Used to be a minesweeper based here, HMS Shoreham, but that got decommissioned about 2 years ago. I did the arrangements for the decommissioning ceremony where we had a march through the town, big parade of all the sailors, and we had to do the organising and the security for that. Now, this is the coast road. I'm going to, once we get past these traffic lights, I'm going to take the first on the right, and I'll show you a weird thing, right? We've got all these tenement buildings here and quite a rough area. Cement truck. Now we're going to turn up this little road here. I can get there. Come on. Alright. Grange Road. Now Grange Road, you'll see ahead there's like a little railway tunnel. So we have here still a lot of the tenement buildings on the right hand side, and pretty scummy. You go through this little railway tunnel, right? Here we go, we're going through railway tunnel, right? And you come across what you would think is a village. Now this is Southwick Green, and it's completely different. Within 100 yards, just going through that tunnel, you come into a completely different area. All the properties in this area privately owned, and I would imagine fairly expensive, but literally the railway line and access through the railway tunnel brings you to an area that is distinctly different from the tenement buildings and the council estate on the south side of the railway line. You know, if you didn't see this in context, you would think you're in the countryside somewhere, in a rural village. It just shows, you know, we only went, since I got back in the car, we went like 150 yards. And we're in an area, you know, we've got some very old buildings here, probably some of the original buildings coming up. Got a car coming up as well. See if we can get past here. But it's a very nice area to live, it would be. But you are literally only the railway line and that tunnel separated from the big council estate, where unfortunately the council has historically placed all its worst tenants. Just a little drive around. As I say, we'll go back through the tunnel with it, mate, just so you don't think I've taken you miles away from where we were. But you've got green, they play cricket on it, they have a fair every year on there, you know, traditional. It's almost like a country fair. It's not like a fair with roundabouts and that kind of stuff. They've even got a parade of shops here. I don't think there's any charity shops in here, but we'll have a look. But Cricketer's Pub overlooking the green, and quite, there may be a charity shop there, quite a prosperous little shopping parade. Everyone seems to be trying to reverse into parking spaces, which is the one thing no one's ever any good at, is reversing. Seems to have all the basics. Got a loft license, a post office. It's even got a WH Smith's. Somebody diving across the road in front of me, which is a bit suicidal. So this is the old part of Southwick. You can tell that by looking at some of the buildings, you know, Flintstone buildings, that kind of stuff. library. We'll take us back in a circle round to the green again. When we were looking for houses, you could always tell a nice area, certainly down here, by the number of trees in the street and how mature the trees are. Because the more mature the trees, the older the street, the older the properties, and generally therefore the more expensive an area. If you ever go to the council estates, one thing you don't see is trees, you know. Council, I used to work in the architects department when I first started out in the council, and the architects would always include trees in their projects when they were doing their designs for new estates. And the first thing the councillors would delete out of the budget would be the money for the trees. So they'd build the estate, but they wouldn't build the trees, or they wouldn't install the trees. So the Cricketers pub, War Memorial. For some reason people always put war memorials in the worst area. One of the Remembrance Day services I used to have to do every year was here at right on the corner on the right here is the War Memorial, which is the worst place you want a war memorial, on the corner of two roads. So we had to close off both roads to make sure it was safe for people to gather in the road to stand by the war memorial. Right, we're going back under the bridge, and you can see literally we go under the bridge, very bad bit of road, and we're back into the council estate. You know, it says a lot about our society that we have areas divided up so conveniently into sections. Right, we're going to make our way back to Worthing, because that is, I think, the only charity shop we can visit without finding somewhere to park in Shoreham Town Centre. And Shoreham Town Centre has very limited parking. Usually when we go to Shoreham Town Centre, we park over on Shoreham Beach on the other side of the river and go across the footbridge and access it that way. It's only, you know, a couple hundred yards or so across the river, but it's so much easier than trying to park to the north of the river. So we're going to go back along the coast road. Oh, is that an ambulance? Looks to be an ambulance. So off to the left hand side is the entrance to the harbour. Directly ahead is the lighthouse and the construction work that's taking place. So say when I was a kid, this harbour would be full of ships and freighters and tankers and all this kind of stuff. We used to go down and walk along the harbour and look at all the countries they used to come from. And you used to get these ones that came from, you know, Soviet communist countries, that kind of stuff. And they would always, they weren't allowed off the boat. They were never allowed off the boat, the guys from the Soviet countries. And they would just stand looking over the railings. And when you walked past, they would shout out to you, you know, oh, have you got any cigarettes or any of that kind of stuff? And you'd go like, well, I'm only 10 years old. Hey, I'm not going to have cigarettes, and if I did, I doubt I'm going to share them with you. They were always after cigarettes, chocolates, and they were always trying to get you to buy stuff for them. Yeah. As I say, it's very rare nowadays you see a ship. When the ships do come in, they're generally carrying timber. But a lot of development. Most of it is high-rise flats, as you can see by the cranes. We've got time. Yeah, we might go over to Shoreham Beach again and just go to a different part of the beach, because you can get a view of the harbour from good day. Giant lobster or prawn, I'm not sure what that is, to be honest. I think that's the one remaining wholesale fish seller. You know, that whole row there would have been warehouses full of, you know, fish and marine products for sale. I think there's just the one now. Now this building on the right, which with the yellow crane, that is on the site of one of my former buildings. That used to be the site of Ada Civic Centre, which was a 4-storey, about the same height as that construction, a 4-storey civic centre with all of the council staff for Ada based in it. But we took it over 15 years ago when Worthing and Ada merged, and I was responsible for all the buildings in Worthing. So in their divine wisdom, they made me responsible for these buildings over here, including the Ada Civic Centre. And I went in there on day one and I was flabbergasted about the condition of it. The building hadn't been properly maintained or anything, and literally within 2 years we shut it down. It was just too much money to run and too much money to repair and maintain. So literally we shut it down within 2 years, and we moved, I think there was about 400 staff over to Worthing and put them in one of our buildings at Worthing. To say they didn't like moving to Worthing would be an understatement. It was like almost a rebellion. But we quelled that one, and they moved, or the ones that didn't want to move left. But the building was in such a poor state. The ceilings were falling down. Offices, I walked around it on the first day and there were offices that were vacant. And when I said to the guy who was the supervisor, I said, why is that office not in use? Oh, the ceilings collapsed. Okay, so why have you not repaired it? Oh, well, we haven't got the money. And it was like, you know, you just couldn't believe in the middle of an office building there were valuable office space empty because ceilings collapsed. When we emptied it, it was convenient because the BBC had just approached us about filming this TV series Cuffs. I only ever went to one series because it was pretty shit. It was very woke. It was one of the first TV series the BBC did that was woke. You know, all the policemen were gay or lesbians, that kind of stuff. And some of the stories were absolutely ridiculous. But they said to us, we want somewhere to base our filming and to build sets and have all our vehicles based and have our production offices and costume department and that. So I took them over, showed them that building. They absolutely loved it because they could have the whole 4-storey building to themselves. And we rented it out to them for a year for the filming. And I think ultimately they paid us like £300,000 to rent the building for a year. And they built all the interior sets in there, inside the police station, the cells. You know, a lot of the stuff where you think it's been filmed elsewhere was actually filmed within that building. And they built these whole mock-up cells and custody centres and weird things. Towards the beginning of the filming, it's weird the way they filmed. They filmed all of the external stuff at the beginning when the sun was out and when it was like spring and summer, and then filmed later in the year when the weather wasn't as good. They filmed all of the interior stuff within the Ada Civic Centre. Now, at the beginning, we still had 1 or 2 offices on the ground floor for housing tenants to come into, but the majority of the building was used by the BBC. And the BBC, what they would do is all of their extras would come to the Civic Centre in the morning, get dressed up by the costume department. They would then get on a coach or minibuses and be taken out to wherever they were going to film that day, you know, elsewhere in the town or the surrounding area. Now we had this notorious, I don't know what you would call it, to be honest, scumbag is probably the best word, who always used to come in and cause problems, you know, kick off and abuse staff, threaten staff and such like. And one day I was there and I was in reception, and in the council chamber that adjoined the main reception there was about 20 extras, all dressed up as police officers in full uniforms, waiting to be collected to go out to film a scene. Can't remember, I think there was a riot scene or something. And of course this guy comes in, immediately starts kicking off, giving it large about what he's going to do and all this kind of stuff. And you know, it was one of these guys that immediately escalated to you know, swearing and violence. So I'm standing there and just, you know, and at the moment he got to the very peak of his aggression, the door to the council chamber opened and these 20 BBC extras dressed as policemen walked out into reception. He took one look at them and he scarpered. He literally was on his toes and ran out of the reception because he literally found himself surrounded by 20 people dressed as policemen. And the location manager, who was a great friend of mine, he was with the extras. He goes, "What was that all about?" And when I told him, they were all killing themselves. He said, "There are lads," he said, "you know, you look the part because that local criminal thought you were the real thing and ran away." So he was, yeah, we did have some laughs filming that, you know. But yeah, it was, and they used to have on site catering, and they had it in the car park of Ada Civic Centre, and I had two guys who were permanently stationed over there to lock and unlock the building, just look after security. And in the morning, all the extras at lunchtime, all the extras would line up, go to the catering trucks and get fed, right? They'd have a, you know, fry up in the morning or bacon butties or whatever. And I went over there one morning and my guys were queuing up with them. I said, "Well, yeah, oh no, we queue up every morning and get a free breakfast." He said, "Lunchtime we'll be queuing up again and we'll get a free lunch as well." I don't think they ever ate as well. You know, they were getting 2 free meals a day on the BBC, and you know, they would do it. And then when the TV series was finally aired on the BBC, it was on BBC One at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and I'd sit down and watch it, and of course you recognise all of the locations and such like. And we're now on the other side of the river, so you get a different view of the development that's taking place. When I sat down and watched Cuffs on the BBC, blow me, there's a couple of scenes that my guys appeared in, and they've been short of like extras, and the guy just said, "Oh, you know, do you mind doing this?" And he goes, no, I'll do it." So they got immortalised in a couple of background scenes as extras on this TV show, but it didn't get the ratings. You know, as I say, it was a bit woke and a bit silly, so it only went to the one series. Right, now around here should be the entrance to Shoreham Fort. Now, in one of the videos we went over, we take the dogs for a walk, we were walking round the beach at Littlehampton and by the sand dunes and such like, and there's a fort there, a Victorian fort, at the entrance to the Arun River. And here in Shoreham there is a Victorian fort, or what remains of a Victorian fort, at the entrance to the Ada River, because similarly the Victorians wanted to defend against invasion. Just gonna adjust the camera for a minute. See if we get this car some scallies just come out of the fort with a load of materials and got into this car where somebody else was driving. So we'll get him on camera just in case. And if anything gets reported as being nicked, we've got him on camera, because that looked a little bit suspicious. Suspicious is suspicious. I think it's all my years of dealing with these individuals. You kind of notice when people are acting oddly. Right, I'm going to switch off and then we'll start filming again once we're outside. Right, here's a view of the inside of the harbour, and you can see in the distance over there the entrance to the lifeboat, and also the lighthouse that we saw when we were coming along the coast road from the charity shop. Over there is the power station and the remaining warehouses, which are used mainly for timber and such like. And then here is what remains of the fort, and there's some really good guys who in their spare time have been uncovering it and restoring it and such like. Have a look. There is the Coast Guard station. Volunteers, I consider it at one stage, but what they basically do is sit in that bloody station monitoring radios. There wasn't any more interesting in that at all. So this is Shoreham Fort, built in 1857 when there was a threat of invasion from France. Scheduled monument. They've actually built here a replica trench, memorial trench. I think that was part of the World War I memorial celebrations. They decided to build. I think it's a lot cleaner than any trench I've ever seen. Definitely. Doesn't appear to be full of mud or anything, which most are. There's a car park, a car. Shoreham Beach, which is the other side of the Ada River, is a very exclusive area. Most of the houses here are at least $500,000. So look at what they're saying about that trench. Shoreham Fort Memorial Training Trench. Downs behind Shoreham used to be a training camp for World War I soldiers, and to about 20-30 years ago you could still see the remnants of where the trenches were that they dug, because they learned how to dig trenches. So over there on the hills is where the soldiers would have learnt how to dig trenches and that before being sent over to the World War I battlefields. And they would have probably gone from here or New Haven, because New Haven had a ferry. It still does have a ferry that goes over to Calais. So they would more than likely have gone from Shoreham or New Haven over to France. Another view of the castle. Well, it's not a castle, it's a fort, isn't it? The equivalent one in Southwick lantern, if you remember, was all overgrown, completely overgrown. And this one was until about 20 years ago. But the guys have gradually cut everything back and started to restore it. We're going up towards the harbour entrance.